"Surely you will not die," the serpent said to the woman, that being Eve in Genesis 3:4. The original lie, the original masterpiece of confusion, of right and wrong. And the irony is, because Eve believed that lie, believed that she would not die, because it wasn't talking about a physical death. Ultimately, yes, but a spiritual, disobeying God, because his laws were meant to keep us in line, to keep us living in harmony with him, with each other, with nature. But she chose to believe that lie, and then that opened her eyes up to what is actually right and wrong, to what is good and evil, to the knowledge of good and evil. That was the tree they were forbidden. And there's just so much of that today. You know, I forgot that last September, right here in California, I guess it was good old Gavin Newsom, signed into law calling August Transgender History Month. We've already got Pride Month in June, and now August is Transgender History Month. And then I see a headline today, there's a trans golfer, a biological male, who is now golfing, winning tournaments on the amateur slate in college, I guess. Haley Davidson. She came out and said women need to stop complaining about not being good enough because they can't beat the people they're competing against. Referring to him and talking about how it's a lack of accountability, not putting in the work or just not being good enough to win, like gaslighting them, blaming them for complaining about losing to a biological male as if there is no advantage, when ironically, not even a year ago, he was in some Britain talk show, talking about how he acknowledges that there are biological advantages, even after doing all of the hormone therapy, that biological men have physical advantages that cannot be taken away. And yet now he's calling out women for complaining. And now we're having a whole month here in California celebrating Transgender History Month. The biggest problem I have with that is that, once again, there's a weaving of lies and truth. And there's a Black History Month. There was a history of oppression against black people in this country. Not that white people haven't felt it in certain areas of the world and even this country, but definitely a big part, sadly, was against black people. So rightfully, there's a Black History Month. I think when you start getting into the stuff that's being indoctrinated into schools now, it's intentionally reversing the type of hatred and racism towards a race, which is why it's so dangerous, which is why we preach love and unity and forgiveness, not retribution and revenge and payback, because that's what this whole world, why it's spiraling out of control. But the thing is, our race is a God-given attribute. And one of the lies that's being blended here is that you can have a Black History Month that, you know, make sure we don't forget the awful histories of racism in the past. That was something, a form of hatred based on something that we could not control, that was God-given. Now, when we have a Transgender History Month, the lie that is baked into that is that that's a God-given trait. And the thing is, even if it's true, even if there was outliers and people were born that way, we're to be born again. But I still don't believe we're born sinners in need of a savior, in need to be born again. So whatever that sin is, we need to be born again and focus on Christ, to not submit to that way of life that goes against our natural God-given state. And the ways in which we've been so gaslit and confused, to the point of delusion, to the point that we think based on our feelings we can change our sex. And to me, it just comes out in this Haley Davidson, in admitting that there's biological advantages, but then calling out women for complaining about them when suggesting that they're just not good enough to compete, and not taking accountability for not being good enough. It's such a double talk, and it shows such a blind spot when it comes to why it's an issue, and why, if we use sports as the barometer as to what's fair when we're integrating biological men who want to be females playing against real females, if we can't distinguish that line of distinction, like if we can't say this is a line of demarcation where, okay, this is not right, it's unfair, then there's never going to be a line that we can agree on. And I guess we can always say that God created us this way. But did he? Did he? This seems to be a problem that is only escalating as the media and the shows around us, the music, all normalizes a way of life that was never supposed to be normal. There can always be an outlier, and we can always have feelings that lead us down a road of destruction, because make no mistake, transgender is a road of destruction, no different than drugs or alcohol or sex outside of marriage or all sorts of things that lead us down a road of destruction, of immorality. And sexual immorality is one of the biggest ones. But right now, that's where we're at. A whole month in August, celebrating transgender history. Again, legitimizing, normalizing, and romanticizing it. And this is not to condemn or to cast hate on anyone who is trans. It's because of a spiritual blindness that's intentionally being cast on the entire world, and those who have rejected the truth of who Jesus is don't see it. So people can hate me and think it's just so bigoted and wacko and far right and zealous or whatever. It's sad that we're at a point where you can't talk about this stuff, about the spiritual deception that leads us to accepting these things. But again, surely you will not die. That original lie. There's so many different ways of life right now that are being celebrated. And the whisper is, surely you won't die. God created you this way. But God created us with a free will. We can choose His way, which sometimes goes against the way we feel and what we want to do, or our own way, which is what the God of this world wants us to do, because it brings us closer to Him, which is the pathway to hell and destruction. You know, the road to destruction is wide, the road to redemption and heaven is narrow. Choose the narrow road. I almost just missed my narrow exit here. But that's about it. That's it for today. Don't fall for the lies. And if you somehow heard this and you think that I hate you because you struggle with something, just know that I don't, because I've struggled with many things my entire life that I know have me on a pathway to destruction, and I still struggle with thoughts and just to do the right thing. And my feelings completely contradict what I know to be right a lot of the time. But I go the way of Jesus and I look to His word, knowing that the more times I do that, the more times I'll be in sync and at peace within, with myself, with Him, with others around me, because I'm not putting myself first. I'm putting Him first. And when you do that, you're automatically putting everybody else around you first. So anyway, I hope this finds you well. This may have been too long, but God bless you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.